Every trader goes through a phase so brutally painful that most people quit long before they ever see the other side. And ironically, this phase is not caused by lack of intelligence, lack of strategy, or lack of motivation. It is caused by the emotional warfare that happens inside your mind when you finally realize that trading is not just charts, indicators, entries, and exits, but a mirror that forces you to confront every weakness you never knew you had. In the beginning, almost every trader enters the market with excitement, hope, passion, and a belief that they are somehow different from the millions who have failed before them. And this illusion creates the perfect psychological trap. You think you will be disciplined. You think you will follow your rules. You think you will treat trading like a business. But the first time you watch price go against you faster than you expected, the first time you miss a perfect entry by a few points, the first time you watch a winning trade turn into a losing one because you hesitated for just a moment, that illusion starts to break. What nobody tells you is that trading will expose the parts of yourself you've spent your entire life avoiding: your impatience, your ego, your greed, your fear of being wrong, your desire for control, your impulsiveness, your emotional fragility all come to the surface. And suddenly, the market becomes a battlefield between the trader you are and the trader you want to be. The painful phase begins when you realize that knowledge alone isn't enough. You can read every book, watch every video, memorize every strategy, backtest for months, and still find yourself doing the exact opposite of what you know you should do. You will promise yourself you won't move your stop loss until the trade is actually about to hit it. You will promise yourself you won't chase a move until the move starts happening without you. You will promise yourself you won't revenge trade until the moment you take a loss that feels too unfair. This is the part of trading that destroys most people because they think the problem is external: the strategy, the market conditions, the time frame, the indicators. When in reality, the problem is internal. It's the psychological pressure of uncertainty, the emotional discomfort of losing money, the fear of looking stupid, the desire to be right, and the constant dopamine addiction created by watching candles move up and down. Most traders do not quit because the market is too hard. They quit because they cannot manage the emotional torture that comes with watching themselves self-sabotage repeatedly. The painful phase is not one catastrophic loss. It is death by 1,000 cuts. It is the slow erosion of confidence after a series of small mistakes. It is the mental exhaustion from fighting your emotions every day. It is the frustration of knowing exactly what you should have done, yet still doing the opposite. You start to question yourself, question your strategy, question your ability, and eventually question whether trading is even possible for someone like you. You begin to think that maybe the successful traders have some secret you don't, when the truth is that they simply survived the psychological destruction that you are going through right now. In this phase, the charts become emotional triggers instead of analytical tools. A green candle makes your heart jump with hope. A red candle makes your stomach tighten with fear. And you begin to interpret price action not as data, but as a personal attack or reward. You feel like the market is against you, like it knows your stop loss, like it reverses just to punish you specifically. Your brain becomes wired for emotional reactions. Every loss feels like confirmation that you're not good enough. Every win feels like validation that you finally figured it out. And this emotional roller coaster keeps you trapped in a cycle of instability. The market becomes an emotional casino. You know you should walk away, yet you keep pressing the button because that dopamine rush is irresistible. And when you lose, you feel compelled to get it back, not because the setup is valid, but because your ego cannot accept defeat. This painful phase is also the time when traders become obsessed with finding the perfect system. They jump from indicator to indicator, strategy to strategy, time frame to time frame, thinking the answer lies somewhere out there. You convince yourself that if you could just find the perfect winning formula, Your emotional problems would disappear. But the truth is, even the best strategy in the world will not save you from yourself. The problem is not the strategy. The problem is the trader trying to execute it. You are fighting your biology, millions of years of evolutionary conditioning that taught your brain to avoid uncertainty and pain at all costs. Your mind is wired to seek safety, but trading requires you to embrace risk. Your instincts scream protect yourself, but trading requires you to accept losses calmly. Your emotions push you to react, but trading requires stillness and patience. The painful phase becomes even worse when inconsistency becomes your normal state. You have a good day and believe you finally understand the market. Then the next day you blow half your account. You follow your rules for 5 trades, then break all your rules on the 6th. You gain confidence from one winning streak, then lose everything in one emotional breakdown. This inconsistency is what kills traders psychologically because it creates the illusion of progress while continuously dragging you back down. You start believing you're close to success, but something always goes wrong. This creates a dangerous emotional pattern. Hope, confidence, loss, frustration, revenge, destruction. And every time you promise yourself it won't happen again, yet it happens again. But the most painful part of this phase is not the financial losses. It is the emotional losses. It is the feeling of disappointment when you break your rules again. It is the frustration of watching others succeed while you suffer. It is the humiliation of knowing you are capable of better, but failing to control your impulses. It is the guilt of blowing accounts that you worked hard to fund. It is the loneliness of realizing nobody around you understands what you are going through. Trading isolates you because your successes and failures are not shared. They are entirely your own responsibility. When you lose, you cannot blame anyone. When you make mistakes, there is no one to hide behind. This level of accountability is emotionally painful for most people. During this phase, you will also face the paradox of trading. The more you want to win, the more you lose. The harder you try, the worse you perform. The more emotionally invested you become, the more fragile your decision-making becomes. Trading rewards detachment, neutrality, patience, and discipline. Traits that are difficult to develop when you are emotionally drowning. You become addicted to overtrading because it feels like taking action, even though action is the very thing destroying your account. You think more trading equals more opportunities, but in reality, more trading equals more emotional exposure, more mistakes, and more psychological fatigue. The market punishes impatience ruthlessly, and yet impatience is the default state of every new trader. The painful phase is also when your identity becomes attached to your results. A losing day feels like you failed as a person, not just as a trader. A winning day feels like you are smart, talented, destined for greatness. This emotional connection to your outcomes is dangerous because it creates internal pressure that becomes unbearable. You start trading to feel good, not to follow a plan. You start avoiding losses to protect your ego, not your account. You start forcing trades to chase emotional validation, not logical edge. Trading becomes a psychological addiction disguised as a financial pursuit. The market will break you many times in this stage. It will test you, push you, frustrate you, and tempt you. It will give you just enough wins to keep you hopeful, then hit you with losses that shake your confidence. It will make you believe you finally figured it out, only to humble you again. This cycle continues until something inside you snaps, not emotionally, but mentally. The snap is not quitting. It is surrendering to the truth that you cannot force the market to give you what you want. The truth that you cannot control outcomes. The truth that your job is not to win every trade, but to systematically execute an edge. This realization marks the beginning of your transformation, but it only comes after suffering. At some point in this painful phase, you reach a moment of brutal honesty, where you can no longer lie to yourself about why you are losing. You realize the market is not the enemy. Other traders are not the enemy. The strategy is not the enemy. The enemy is the emotional version of you who shows up when money is on the line. You begin to understand that trading does not require a new indicator, it requires a new identity. You cannot trade successfully as the same person who started this journey because that person reacts emotionally, acts impulsively, and seeks excitement. Trading success requires a version of you who is calm, disciplined, detached, and methodical. And the painful phase is the bridge that forces this transformation. You do not become a disciplined trader by reading about discipline. You become disciplined after the market punishes you so many times that your ego finally dies. You do not become patient by telling yourself to be patient. You become patient after impatience has cost you more money than you could tolerate. You do not become emotionally neutral by trying to suppress your feelings. You become neutral after emotional reactions have repeatedly destroyed your account. The market reshapes you through suffering, and there is no shortcut through this process. Eventually, the pain becomes so repetitive that something inside you changes. You stop resisting reality. You stop fighting price. You stop trying to predict everything. You stop expecting the market to behave the way you want. You stop searching for perfection. This surrender is not weakness. It is the moment you finally align yourself with how trading actually works. You begin to realize that the market owes you nothing. You begin to accept that losses are normal. You begin to understand that your job is not to avoid pain, but to manage it. You begin to see that uncertainty is not a flaw in trading. It is the essence of trading. This acceptance marks the beginning of emotional stability, and emotional stability is the beginning of consistency. During this transition, your relationship with the market changes. Instead of reacting to every tick, you observe calmly. Instead of forcing trades, you wait for your setups. Instead of chasing moves, you stay still. Instead of needing to be right, you focus on executing correctly. Instead of trading to feel something, you trade to follow your plan. Your emotional swings become smaller. Your decisions become cleaner. Your expectations become more realistic. You begin to treat trading with the seriousness it deserves. You stop gambling. You stop guessing. You stop trying to be a hero. You start thinking in probabilities. You start valuing preservation over excitement. You start understanding that consistency is built on boring discipline, not adrenaline. The painful phase forces you to rebuild your mindset from the ground up. You start keeping records of your trades, not to judge yourself, but to understand yourself. You begin examining your emotional responses, your impulsive tendencies, your psychological patterns. You identify your weaknesses not with shame, but with awareness. You begin to see that your problems were never technical. They were always behavioral. You slowly create rules, boundaries, and structures that protect you from yourself. You learn the power of walking away. You learn the power of waiting. You learn the power of saying, no trade today. You learn that discipline is not about forcing yourself to do what you hate, but about creating an environment where your worst impulses have less room to operate. And then something miraculous happens. The market stops feeling chaotic. You begin to recognize repetitive behavior in price. You begin to understand that your edge does not need to win all the time. It just needs to win over a series of trades. You begin to feel less attached to outcomes and more attached to execution. Profits start becoming a byproduct of good decisions instead of emotional reactions. You start having strings of trades where you follow all your rules, and even if they lose, you feel a sense of pride. You judge yourself based on consistency, not money. This shift is what separates real traders from gamblers. You start to play the long-term game instead of the immediate gratification game. As you continue through this transition, your account curve begins to stabilize. You no longer experience wild swings. You no longer blow accounts. You no longer risk everything to win something small. You stop caring about being perfect and start caring about being stable. The emotional chaos starts fading. Your mind feels clearer, calmer, more structured. You start thinking like a risk manager, not a fortune teller. You set your stop loss and accept its existence as part of the game. You stop moving it. You stop widening it. You stop praying for price to come back. You execute, accept, and move on. This emotional detachment becomes the foundation of your growth. The painful phase eventually dissolves into a new kind of pain, one that is quieter but transformative. It is the pain of discipline, the pain of patience, the pain of missing trades because they didn't meet your criteria. It is the pain of watching price move exactly as you predicted, but refusing to enter because your rules were not met. It is the pain of sitting through sideways markets and taking no trades while others are gambling and making quick profits. But this pain is healthy because it builds the muscles of consistency. It constructs the emotional framework that protects you from destruction. It strengthens your ability to endure uncertainty without reacting. Gradually, you begin to realize that the painful phase was not a punishment. It was preparation. It was the market stripping away every illusion you had. It was teaching you that success in trading is not about finding the perfect entry, but mastering the imperfect human on the mouse. It was forcing you to confront a truth that few people accept. Trading is simple, but being the kind of person who can execute simple rules is extremely difficult. The painful phase builds the mental version of you who can actually handle profitability. It teaches you discipline, patience, risk management, detachment, and emotional control, not by explanation, but by experience. When you finally emerge on the other side, you start seeing trading differently. Profits no longer excite you excessively. Losses no longer devastate you. You view the market as a probabilistic environment instead of a source of validation. You focus on the long-term equity curve instead of individual trades. You understand that your job is not to win today, but to be consistent for the next decade. Trading becomes boring, predictable, methodical, structured, almost mechanical, and that is exactly why you begin to succeed. You no longer chase the market. You let the market come to you. You no longer trade out of fear or greed. You trade out of logic. You no longer depend on hope. You depend on rules. Others will look at your calmness and think you have some secret advantage. They will think you have a perfect system, a special indicator, or insider knowledge. But the truth is far simpler. You survived the painful phase that they were not willing to endure. You became emotionally resilient in a game that destroys the insecure. You built discipline in an environment designed to exploit impulsiveness. You detached from outcomes in a world where everyone else is obsessed with them. You became a trader by going through the suffering that everyone goes through, but almost nobody finishes. And the irony is that once you finally reach this stable, consistent mindset, you look back at your earlier self and barely recognize that person. The version of you who chased trades, moved stops, overtraded, panicked, and hoped feels like a different human entirely. You start to understand that trading didn't just change how you think about the market. It changed how you think about yourself. It taught you patience. It taught you humility. It taught you emotional maturity. It taught you delayed gratification. It taught you that mastery comes from self-control, not intelligence. The market did not make you a better trader. It made you a better person. You realized that success in trading was never about predicting candles. It was about managing emotions. It was never about knowing more. It was about doing less. It was never about finding the perfect strategy. It was about becoming the version of yourself who could execute any decent strategy consistently. The painful phase was the crucible that burned away everything weak, impulsive, and undisciplined in you. It stripped you down to a raw, honest version of yourself, and then forced you to rebuild from the inside out. That rebuilding process is what creates the calm, patient, disciplined, emotionally neutral trader who can finally extract money from the markets sustainably. In the end, every successful trader has one thing in common. They survived the painful phase long enough to transform. They endured the frustration, the confusion, the emotional breakdowns, the losses, the self-doubt, the inconsistency, the anger, the hopelessness, and the psychological chaos. They kept going even when it felt impossible. And eventually, the pain became wisdom, the losses became lessons, the mistakes became discipline, and the chaos became clarity. Trading rewards those who are willing to suffer for mastery. And when you finally emerge from that painful phase, when you finally operate with emotional stability, when you finally follow your rules without effort, when you finally understand the probabilistic nature of the game, you realize something profound. The market was never trying to destroy you. It was trying to reveal the version of you who could finally succeed.